Max Verstappen has lost trust in the team. McLaren could start sabotaging Oscar with team orders, and Mercedes is shocked by the Red Bull downfall. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. As Valtteri Bottas fell to 22nd in the standings in a 20-driver field, new chief Mattia Binotto says Audi F1 cannot accept Sauber's current results. Sauber, which will be rebranded Audi in 2026, are locked to the bottom of the championship standings as the team has yet to score a single point in 16 races. Left with just 8 races in which to turn their season around, and at the very least challenge Williams, who have 6 points, for 9th place, Sauber showed no signs of that happening in the 2 races since the summer break. Plumb last at the Dutch Grand Prix, they were again at the very back of the field in qualifying at Monza, before Valtteri Bottas made a few positions to finish P16. But with Williams' new signing, Franco Colapinto 12th on his debut, Bottas now finds himself 22nd on the driver's log in a sport that only fields 20 regular drivers, as he's behind Colapinto and also one-off Ferrari driver Oliver Bearman. The Finn's best results were back-to-back P13s in Monaco and Canada. "We cannot afford it," was Binotto's blunt assessment as per Motorsport.com. "I think this is the team that has to become, in the future, a winning team. And the only way to do that is starting to move up, progressing. We need to train our muscles for the future." So, yes, I think we need certainly to improve. That's important for ourselves, that's important for the team, it's important for the brand, it's important for our partners, and we cannot somehow accept the current position. We cannot hide behind the fact that we have been last and second last in the Zandvoort race, and in qualifying here, the same position some distance to the cars ahead. So we need to put effort in improving. We need to balance all the priorities and our efforts from the short to the medium and the long term. But I don't think certainly that our position today is a comfortable one for us at all. It's very painful. As I said, we need to train our muscles and we need to improve because the solid foundations do not come in one day. It's a team that needs to do continuous progress every single day, step by step. So, starting from as soon as possible, I would say. Binotto, Ferrari's former team boss, was appointed Audi's new Formula One chief operating and chief technical officer and took up the reins at the beginning of August. He revealed his first impressions are that while there are great people within the Sauber team and Audi's engine project, there is a lot that still needs to be done. "In a couple of weeks you cannot see everything," he said. "Certainly you've got only a first impression of what you may find or see, both in Hinwil for the chassis or in Neuburg for the powertrain. But I think there are great people. We've got a clear intentions and objectives ahead of us to become a winning team. But certainly there is much to do, that is the first feedback. We are competing against teams that have been for many years in F1. They are big organizations up and down, and that is not our case. We need to ramp up in terms of people, in terms of organization, in terms of tools, process, methodologies, facilities. We need to merge, certainly, with what we're doing in Hinwil together with the one we are doing in Neuburg on the powertrain. And it's about as well, culture and mindset, because to become a winning team, it's about changing our mindset towards what is required. Sauber Audi have yet to announce their full 2025 driver lineup, having only confirmed Nico Hülkenberg. According to reports, it's Bottas who is leading the running to remain with the team for a 4th consecutive season. Charles Leclerc sees Singapore as the next venue where Ferrari could shine, but wants to keep emotions and expectations in check after a huge Monza win. Ferrari brought a heavily upgraded SF24 to their home race, hoping this upgrade package would prove more successful than that introduced in Spain. The answer was rather empathic, as Ferrari and Leclerc made the one-stop strategy work to claim victory and send the Tifosi wild. But after soaking up the emotion of that Monza triumph, Leclerc wants feet firmly on the ground at Ferrari, highlighting how his Monaco victory was followed by a wretched run of races for team and driver. Like Monaco, Monza was described as a very specific track by Leclerc, who feels Ferrari remain a step behind McLaren for outright pace. "We've got to be cautious," he told media, including PlanetF1.com, after his Italian Grand Prix victory. "After Monaco, I think we've had the 4 worst races of the season, because Monaco was so specific to our car at that time. Monza is also a very specific and particular track. Lots of straights, not many corners. We had a rear wing for this track as well, which helped us to win. We had also another upgrade, which I think definitely brought us closer to McLaren, but I don't think it's enough to be the car to beat for the rest of the season on other tracks. I think we still have a lot of work to do, but I'm really happy anyway to have won here in Italy. But, asked if there is a track still coming up in F1 2024 where Ferrari can take the fight to McLaren and Red Bull again, Leclerc highlighted Singapore as a potential opportunity, with Monza proving that they can match McLaren if they perfect a race weekend. It was in Singapore last year, where Ferrari's Carlos Sainz inflicted Red Bull's only defeat of the entire 2023 season. Again, before this race, I don't think I was seeing myself challenging for wins anywhere else, Leclerc said. Maybe Singapore. Singapore maybe could be a strong track for us. On the other tracks, I still feel like we are a step behind McLaren and Red Bull, but we've seen that we can be very on a par with McLaren if we do everything perfect. Again, I think that the upgrade has helped us in some ways to have the same pace as them. However, for the other tracks, I don't know whether it will be enough to completely close the gap, especially the gap we've seen in the previous races, not here. So yeah, we've got to wait and see, but we've done some step forward. I think we need some others. Surely, though, Monza provides a huge shot of momentum for Ferrari with 8 rounds remaining of F1 2024 remaining and a Constructors' title challenge brewing. Leclerc does not want to look at it in that way, and instead wants a reset of emotions after Monza. On the subject of taking momentum from Monza, Leclerc said, "Well, again, I think we shouldn't. And I've said that after Monaco, and I think we did that. We shouldn't rely on the race we have just done. And as a team, it's really important for us that once we come back at the factory, we reset from everything that has happened during the weekend. We learn from it, and we try to analyze everything. But we should leave emotions aside and reset as a team and go again in Baku, not having crazy high expectations because that's not where the team is at the moment. I repeat myself, but Monza is a very specific track. We have been very strong this weekend, but Baku will be maybe very different and Singapore again very different. So we've got to reset. We did that reset from Monaco to Montreal, but as we've seen from Monaco to Montreal, it was a really big change from one weekend to another. And then we went through 3 or 4 of the worst races of the season, just because we were trying to understand what was going on in our car. So hopefully we don't go through 3 or 4 very difficult races from now on, and I don't think it will be the case. But again, it's very important that not only the team, but I think also the expectations from outside don't become crazy high from one race to another because this is not realistic. Have we done a step forward? Yes. Is it enough to go and win races until the end of the season? I don't think so yet, but we did a good step in the right direction. Ferrari are now only 39 points behind F1 2024 Constructors' Championship leaders Red Bull. Ralf Schumacher has warned McLaren they could destroy Oscar Piastri if they ask him to back off from Lando Norris with Andrea Stella, saying they'll review their papaya rules after Monza. Although it was Norris who started on pole position at the Italian Grand Prix and made a good getaway off the line, he was not leading at the end of the first lap, having been overtaken by Piastri. Despite being reminded of McLaren's papaya rules ahead of the Italian Grand Prix, Piastri challenged his teammate through the second chicane on the opening lap, Norris claiming they would have crashed had he braked 1 meter later. The Aussies' action put McLaren in a bit of a predicament, with pundits questioning whether they would issue team orders in favor of Norris, given he's P2 in the drivers' standings, give him a better strategy, or let the drivers fight it out amongst themselves. They went with the latter and told him he could race Piastri, but that papaya rules must be adhered to. Norris wasn't able to get close enough to challenge Piastri and finished behind his teammate in 3rd place. What can you say? Schumacher, a former F1 driver turned pundit, told Sky Deutschland, "Oscar was fast. It was harsh of Oscar, but he would probably have been breathing down his neck the whole time. The more important question is whether the two of them pushed each other so hard that they managed to get out of the one-stop. That would have to be clarified within the team." McLaren two-stopped both drivers as they suffered high tire wear, while Charles Leclerc came through on a one-stop strategy to win Ferrari's home race. But while McLaren opted not to issue team orders at Monza, it's something team boss Andrea Stella admits he may have to do in the future, and it will be in Norris's favor as he is in the best position to challenge Verstappen. The Briton is 62 points behind the Red Bull driver, while Piastri is a further 44 points off the pace. Both drivers are mathematically in the title fight, But Lando is obviously in the best position from a numbers point of view, Stella told the media, including planetf1.com at Monza. We are fighting Max Verstappen, so I think if we want to give support to one driver, we definitely have to pick the one that is in the best position. And also, I think Lando, as you know, he's been doing very well, like pole position in Zandvoort, pole position here. If anything with Lando, we need to adjust some little racing things which may help him, may help us capitalize on pole position like we had here in Monza. I think if we look at this first lap while we review it together, we might see that there were a couple of things that we could have done more, slightly better. It's a position Schumacher doesn't envy Stella for being in. As long as the two are so close together, I would have a hard time as team boss, he admitted. You can destroy a driver to some extent if you tell him that he has to back off. Recording their worst two-car points haul of the championship in Monza, Helmut Marko says there were so many factors that caused Red Bull problems. But the good news is a moment with Max Verstappen on the Saturday of the Italian Grand Prix helped the team identify the weakness and make a decision on how to fix it. Red Bull lost ground to McLaren and Lando Norris in both championships at the weekend as they struggled with the balance of the RB20, which ultimately cost them lap time. Verstappen qualified down in 7th place, where he was 7/10 slower than pole sitter Norris before making up one position in the Grand Prix. Marko later admitted McLaren's sporting decision not to swap Oscar Piastri and Norris with their papaya rules in play went some way towards minimizing Red Bull's misery, as Verstappen still holds a 62-point lead in the drivers' standings. It, however, is not looking as rosy in the constructors' standings with the Woking team, a mere 8 points behind Red Bull, having outscored them by 22 in Monza. Marko says there were many factors that hurt Red Bull this past weekend, the most notable of which is that they've lost the balance with the RB20. Max cannot use his ability to push to the limit because the car does not allow it, as it reacts too unpredictably, he told Sky Deutschland. There are so many factors that cause us problems. At some point with the upgrades, we lost the balance, and with the balance also the ability to move the car quickly. What was decided is that we will go back until we find the point where we took a wrong turn. We will see how quickly that goes. We are starting with Baku and are confident. In a separate interview with De Telegraaf, Marko revealed it was a moment with Verstappen on the Saturday at Monza that helped Red Bull understand where the weakness of the car is. That meant the team could finally take a decision on what path to take to resolve it. Max recognized on Saturday where the weakness of the car is, Marko told De Telegraaf. Together with the engineers, a decision was made on how to improve the car and make it competitive again. We just need to find out which part made the car worse. If we knew that, we wouldn't be in this situation. As for Verstappen, the Dutchman told the media, including planetf1.com, that Red Bull have to turn it around. It's not easy to do that very quickly, and then if we can put that on the car, then it becomes more drivable. Never mind Red Bull's slender lead in the Constructors' Championship, the reigning world champion is worried he could yet lose the world title to Norris. At the moment, he admitted, both championships are not realistic. Toto Wolff says Red Bull's loss of form in recent races is really weird, but doubts the team can be written off just yet. With Red Bull going from dominant wins to middling points positions in recent races, Mercedes' team boss Toto Wolff is mystified by where the Milton Keynes-based squad's pace has vanished. With Red Bull failing to trouble the podium at Monza as Max Verstappen came home in 6th with Sergio Perez in 8th, it's resulted in Red Bull's championship lead over McLaren shrinking down to just 8 points with 8 race weekends remaining. Momentum is firmly on McLaren's side, with the MCL38 proving one of the fastest and most versatile cars on the grid, if not the outright quickest. It's been a bizarre shift in fortunes for Red Bull, who started the year picking up where it left off last season, with dominant wins including 4 victories from the first 6 races. But Verstappen is now winless since the Spanish Grand Prix in June, his longest losing streak since 2020, and Wolff said the Dutch driver's talents are no longer enough to keep Red Bull ahead of the rest. Yeah, that's really weird, he told planetf1.com when asked about Red Bull's change in competitiveness. I mean, I have no insight, obviously, but that is not at all the Red Bull of the start of the year. Dominant. I think that Max was able to keep it going for a while with his ability, but it seems now that from the sheer results, and that's what I see without understanding, without knowing what's going on inside because it could also be a blip. That was probably one of the worst races that we've seen for many years to have no pace. But who am I to say that? We've been 2 years where nothing functioned, and the same with Ferrari a few races ago. While things might be going against Red Bull at present, Wolff said it would be perilous to write off the reigning world champions anytime soon. I don't think you can write them off, he said. They are a formidable team, and I'm sure there will be better races, but McLaren is clearly the favorite now for the Constructors' Championship. They have 2 drivers scoring. I bet Red Bull didn't expect that at the beginning of the year. Speaking to the media after the Italian Grand Prix, Red Bull team boss Christian Horner spoke of the disconnect between the front and rear of the RB20 that his drivers are experiencing. While the RB20 still shows up as competitively fast on occasion, Horner said the balance issues that have emerged are exacerbated by the mitigating steps the team is having to make. I think on others, perhaps running more downforce perhaps hides some of the balance issues that we have, he said. You can see that we've got a disconnection in balance that just isn't working. Then, as soon as you end up in that situation, you end up harder on tires, you end up compensating. You move the balance around, you cure one problem, but you create another, so you just end up in a vicious circle. Curiously, Horner also revealed that the issues currently plaguing the team actually first arose towards the end of the 2023 season, as the dominant RB19 showed signs of the same imbalance. I think it's been there for some time, he said. Actually, really going through the data, there were issues there at the beginning of the year in the characteristic. Others have obviously made a step, and as we push the package harder, it's exposed the issue. Even if you go back in the data, there were a few races last year where we started to see this, in Austin and so on. So I think it's a characteristic that we know we have to address, and it's full focus in the factory of Milton Keynes to do that. Losing to McLaren and Mercedes in qualifying at Monza, Helmut Marko called for the front wing of both cars to be analyzed, prompting a "here we go" response from leading F1 pundit Damon Hill. McLaren locked out the front row of the grid for the Italian Grand Prix, with Lando Norris taking pole position ahead of Oscar Piastri, while George Russell was third quickest in the Mercedes. In a Q3 where the top 6 were separated by less than 0.2 of a second, Lewis Hamilton also made the cut in 6th place. Red Bull did not. Max Verstappen was only 7th quickest, 0.695s off Norris's pace, with his teammate Sergio Perez a further 0.04s back. Red Bull Motorsport advisor Marko cried foul. Speaking to ORF after qualifying, the 81-year-old said, "The front wing of McLaren and Mercedes must be analyzed." His comment caught the attention of 1996 F1 world champion Hill, who took to X in a simple message, but one that made his thoughts on that very clear. Marko's comment about the McLaren and Mercedes front wing comes in the wake of Christian Horner drawing attention to both after Red Bull's crushing defeat at the Dutch Grand Prix. "I think it's more where have the others found performance," he said, after Norris beat Verstappen by 23 seconds at Zandvoort. "I think the front wing is a key area where others have found some performance. The way the front wings are being used are quite different. If you look at the front wing angle of McLaren and Mercedes, they're very, very different. Very different to that rest of the grid. Front wings, and especially flexi front wings, are not a new hot topic in Formula One, with the FIA even going as far as to attach additional cameras to some cars' wings to have a closer look earlier this year. It had Dutch pundit Tom Coronel telling Viaplay, "Everyone wants to know McLaren's secret because it's worth a lot of money. If you do well with high downforce and low downforce, like Zandvoort and now Monza, and you're good with tire management everywhere, then they're going to be collecting big trophies for the rest of the season." McLaren's front wing, however, was no match for Ferrari's one-stop strategy in the Grand Prix, as Charles Leclerc used that to beat Oscar Piastri to the line by 2.6s with Lando Norris P3. But with a double podium on the day, McLaren outscored Red Bull by 21 points to close the gap in the Constructors' Championship to 9 points with 8 races remaining. That's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.